Gonna have to shoot me.
Tommy Lee Jones brings back his Oscar-winning character from The Fugitive, this time tracking a fugitive played by Wesley Snipes in U.S. Marshals, one of 5 big new movies we're going to be reviewing this week on Siskel and Ebert, and I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune, and our first film is U.S. Marshals, and this trip with U.S. Marshal Samuel Gerard, Tommy Lee Jones, is not as exciting as the one in The Fugitive because I never really felt this time that either the hero or the alleged villain was in any real jeopardy, ever. Snipes, accused of murdering 2 federal officers, escapes custody in a scene that could have been taken from the airborne convict movie, Con Air. Also figuring into the story is a somewhat mysterious government agent played by Robert Downey Jr. Here, his character demonstrates skills that we assume will help Tommy Lee Jones catch Snipes.
Whoa, 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 what are you doing? What's he doing?
What's next, fellas? Cow tipping?
Now it's all downhill as Gerard leads a chase through a swamp after Wesley Snipes.
You get a visual on our man, you put up a flare, you call for backup, you stay in the boat.
You be careful. Always.
As a vehicle for Tommy Lee Jones, U.S. Marshals gives him lots to do in a bossy wise guy role. But again, I had no rooting interest here as I did with Harrison Ford in the first picture. If I'm going to see extended shootout scenes, I'd like to think that someone could really get fatally shot. But I invested very little emotion in U.S. Marshals except to admire the economical way Tommy Lee Jones uses dialogue. He's like a verbal lion tamer wherever he goes in this story.
Yeah, Tommy Lee Jones is right on target, but the screenplay is not lean and focused. It starts out with a cliche from so many other action pictures where the hero has to go into an apartment where a madman is holed up and he has to shoot it out with him and bring him out alive. And that character turns out to be utterly insignificant and completely unnecessary to the story. And also the Irina Jacob character, who is Wesley Snipes' girlfriend, is completely unnecessary. They have all these people they're bringing in for scenes they don't need, and we don't really get involved in the central story.
And you know what I'm saying about no one was in jeopardy?
Well, you know nobody's in jeopardy because you saw the first picture. Okay. You know what the structure is.
But in the first time you saw it, even though we knew the TV show existed, yeah, I felt lives were at risk.
That's because they were able to sell us the story the first time, and this time,
no.
We don't buy. Okay, next movie, and our next film is a gore fest named Hush, starring Jessica Lange as a horse breeder who hopes to breed herself a grandson using the same sensibility that has worked so well with her animals. The movie co-stars Jonathan Schaech as her son and Gwyneth Paltrow as the woman he loves and eventually marries. When Paltrow gets pregnant, they decide to try to make a go of the once famous horse farm that has recently gone through bad times. On the farm, though, Lange tries to control her daughter-in-law's every move.
I'm gonna go say hello.
No, I forbid it.
Excuse me?
She's just a crazy old woman. I don't think she deserves your attention, darling, that's all.
Well, I don't think I've been forbidden to do anything since I was 5 years old.
That's Nina Foch in the wheelchair as the mother-in-law that Lange hates. She plays a cruel visit to her at a nursing home.
Are you gonna behave, Alice?
Damn you!
Now you stay away from my boy.
After Paltrow wises to move out, she's shocked to find a secret nursery on the horse farm, which is upstairs, of course, over the stables.
What are you doing?
It was my surprise for you, honey. Oh, well.
Surprise?
I wanted to set it all up like this for you to see. And then I was gonna ship it all up to you in New York.
Hush is one of those Spider-Woman movies where the villainess walks through the entire role with a cigarette in one hand and a drink in the other, but Lang is effective in the role and even suggests some psychological complexity instead of simply making the woman into a one-dimensional monster. The character I couldn't stand was her son, played by Jonathan Schaech. In order for this plot to work, he has to be very, very slow to catch on to anything, absent at every crucial moment, and so incurious that after he's told his wife has given birth and is asleep, he doesn't even walk over to the bed to see for himself. You sit through this movie wanting to shout out suggestions at the screen like, "Wake up, dummy."
Well, I'll tell you, Roger, I actually enjoyed it for the very reason. Yes, for the very reason that you mentioned, Jessica Lange's performance. And maybe it was also a woman controlling another woman. And you called it in the beginning, and I completely disagree. You called it a gore fest. I don't think that other than the
blood in this movie.
Only in the birth scene, Roger. There isn't. This is not.
There's also a lot of psychological gore, James.
Well, oh, what is psychological gore, Roger? In other words, when you call it a gore fest, that means blood.
People are basically making each other bleed inside by the way they're treating each other.
Okay. Well, that to me can be very exciting. That's known as cruelty. Yeah. And I thought it was because Lange to me. It's just what you said. She's obviously a control freak, and she wants to control. She's jealous of the woman coming in between her and the son, and all of that I thought worked in the picture. I was surprised.
She's a good actress, but you've got to admit the plot is absurd, absolutely absurd. The daughter-in-law is real slow to catch on. The son is a real slow study.
The son has a reason to be.
Is manipulated in such a ways to bring about these very unlikely events.
The son has a reason to be slow, and it's not that he's just dumb. Money. He doesn't. She represents his whole livelihood can be taken away if he goes against his mom.
He has inherited the farm. She doesn't own any of it at all. That's the whole point of the movie. He's got all the money already.
She can control him and screw up his life big time, and that's what he's afraid of.
Nothing to do with money. Okay. Coming up later in the show, Twilight with Paul Newman, Gene Hackman, and Susan Sarandon.
You are good. You are very good.
And coming up next, the new film from the makers of Fargo, The Big Lebowski, with Jeff Bridges.
I received this ransom note this morning. This is a bummer, man.
In the briefcase?
Papers. Just papers. My papers. Business papers.
And what do you do, sir?
I'm unemployed.
Jeff Bridges plays one of two characters named Jeff Lebowski in the would-be comedy called The Big Lebowski from Fargo filmmakers Joel and Ethan Coen. And I certainly hope that the main reason I didn't care for this film isn't that it simply suffers by comparison to their great film Fargo. Because most every film I'm going to see this year or next year isn't going to measure up to that picture. I just think that the humor in The Big Lebowski is uninspired. Jeff Bridges plays a too self-consciously created character named Jeff Lebowski, a laid-back 80s dude in surfer shorts who is mistaken for and then confronts a high-powered businessman also named Jeff Lebowski, played by David Huddleston.
I am not Mr. Lebowski. You're Mr. Lebowski. I'm the dude. So that's what you call me, that or his dudeness or duder or, El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.
The dude becomes involved in a kidnapping for ransom scheme involving the other Lebowski's wife, and boy, isn't kidnapping for ransom a tired plot these days? A more typically offbeat Coen Brothers moment occurs when Bridges' bowling buddy, John Goodman, offers his opinion on how to handle a crisis in the kidnapping caper.
Are they going to
You want a tow? I can get you a tow. Believe me. There are ways, dude. You don't want to know about it, believe me.
Yeah, but Walter...
Hell, I can get you a tow by 3 o'clock this afternoon with nail polish.
The dude also has a romantic interest in the film, Julianne Moore as Mr. Lebowski's daughter, and here they reenact, I guess, what is a parody of the flying scene in Superman. Some of the comedy plays itself out in bowling alleys, and this is not cutting-edge humor with John Turturro approaching the pins. What are we supposed to do with that? Laugh at how tacky, serious bowlers are? Kingpin was a much funnier film set in the world of bowling. Jeff Bridges' character wasn't worth my time. There's no heart to him, like, say, the Frances McDormand character in the Coen Brothers' Fargo. The Big Lebowski, a big disappointment.
I liked it enough to recommend it, and I think there's a lot of heart to the Jeff Bridges character. I think this is a very interesting performance of a guy who never really finishes anything. He's described as the laziest man in Los Angeles, and he has these two wonderful friends, Steve Buscemi and John Goodman. Goodman gives a very good performance. And the whole point is, of course, the plot is a cliche, the kidnapping scheme, but the whole point is, the plot is essentially, I think what the Coen brothers are doing is satirizing a plot like that by attacking it through these woefully comic and incompetent characters who are absolutely adrift and way out of their element here, and that's what's funny.
I just thought they were so obviously written, particularly the Jeff Bridges character, as this dude type. And then the other thing is, because there's only been 2 pictures of theirs I haven't liked, and that would be the Hudsucker Proxy, which I don't even care for either, and this one. And I think that decor got involved in both of those pictures. I noticed their art direction more of this picture and Hudsucker, and the other thing, wealthy people. Hudsucker, and here, the Big Lebowski, the other
So
Lebowski.
they shouldn't make any more movies about wealthy people?
They ought to be careful.
When we come back, Paul Newman, Susan Sarandon, and Gene Hackman star in a thriller called Twilight.
Still love me.
Lamar. Here's the address. Put it in her hand, okay? I suppose you think it's blackmail, right?
A movie star played by Gene Hackman sends an old friend, Paul Newman, on a private mission in that early scene from Twilight. Hackman doesn't have long to live and thinks he can trust Newman, an ex-cop, an ex-drunk who is now a semi-retired private eye. Hackman's wife, played by Susan Sarandon, is also a movie star, and Newman has had a crush on her for years. But the delivery assignment leads to a death, and Newman thinks Sarandon may be connected.
You knew Lester Ivor. You were at his apartment this afternoon. Find what you were looking for?
What are you talking about?
What's that perfume you wear? The reason I ask was still in the air when I got there.
James Garner plays another of Newman's old pals, a former head of security at a movie studio. He has a lot of insights into the movie star household and into Newman's condition.
You lose a woman like Catherine and a whole lot of money in the same week, you can begin to feel sorry for yourself.
I can see how you might. Never having had either.
I used to think that Jack Ames was about the luckiest man I'd ever run across. Looks like he's run out of luck, though.
The title of Twilight reflects its tone. It's not long until sundown for these characters, and this is their last hurrah involving violence, passion, jealousy, and greed. The performances are very good, and Newman's reminded me of his work in the much better film Nobody's Fool, which was also directed by Robert Benton and based on writing by the same writer, Robert Russo. This time, however, the rich characters are trapped in a worn-out plot with arbitrary surprises and unnecessary characters. I wanted the plot to just get out of the way so I could spend more time with the people.
Absolutely, Roger. Same reaction, and I'm giving it thumbs down. Are you as well?
Yes.
Yeah, because here you have this incredible cast, and we have just too much stuff, and why are they in service of a story like this? And, you know, some of the things, I think Paul Newman should avoid playing a guy with drinking problems for a change once in a while. You know, that's such a cliche for him, and I don't know why they were drawn to this material. Why do they need this story?
I don't know either. I don't know why the extra characters, like the Giancarlo Esposito character, he comes in out of nowhere and becomes an unnecessary sidekick. You know, this is an example. Here, this movie and The Big Lebowski are both about characters and plots. And the plots are completely arbitrary in both cases.
Yes.
And in The Big Lebowski, what you have is comic tension by working against the plot, and here you have collapse because they're working with the plot.
And I didn't like either one of them, and my expectations were sky high for both of them. The picture that the people should see, that we've just mentioned, Nobody's Fool. That's a wonderful piece of work. Coming up next, the new independent film from writer-director John Sayles, Men with Guns, is next. Like John Sayles, who tackles with an independent voice subjects that other filmmakers would never approach. In his new film titled Men with Guns, he creates, through indirection, a very complete portrait of poor people living amid fear and disease in a third world country. The film begins with a doctor reflecting back on the years he tried to help the poor of a Latin American country get healthy.
He estado pensando en mis alumnos del programa.
Mi papá entrenó doctores para el gobierno.
Embajadores de la salud.
Me acuerdo de eso. De los extranjeros que venían a acabar con la solitaria.
La Alianza para el Progreso.
The doctor, played by Federico Lupi, decides to find out what has become of his former medical students who he sent into the countryside. And along the way, we meet some Indian villagers.
¿Por qué los mataron?
Porque el ejército andaba encabronado con ellos.
A motif in this film is how the villagers are intimidated by the constant threat of violence, both from the army and from guerrillas, both so-called men with guns. A former priest the doctor meets on his journey talks about cowardice.
Seguido se imaginaba que él moriría heroicamente en manos de infieles, que un rayo de luz dorada se lo llevaría al cielo y que su alma descansaría a la derecha de Dios Padre. Pero cuando volvió a la realidad, pues la iglesia le llamaba teología de la liberación al evangelio que él predicaba. Pero él prefirió mejor liberarse a sí mismo.
Later, a couple of American tourists pop up. And all the while, writer-director John Sayles layers vignettes involving the poor Indians. He introduces us to a whole world that represents, I suspect, a lot of people in this very special film that resonates with some hard political truths. I really liked Men with Guns very much.
Oh, I liked it too. You know, John Sayles just grows and grows and grows. I wonder how many people in Hollywood realize that he finances his movies himself, edits them himself, and then puts them up for distribution so that he can be completely independent. And what he's done here is a post-political picture. This is not about the brave guerrillas fighting the evil army or the brave army fighting the ruthless guerrillas. This is about the people who only want a place where they can be left alone to live. And you've got all of these people on both sides shooting up the countryside because the guns have given them power that is totally out of proportion to any political goal that they have.
That's why I said this movie is about the people. You will get to know these people's lives in a way that you don't get to know in other action-oriented pictures. We've talked about this over the years, that the working class of America isn't represented in film, and the real mass of people in third world countries, we never get to meet them in any way. They're straw men in most pictures.
The performance here by this actor, Lupi, is really strong. As the doctor whose wife has died and he's retired and he wants to see what he's done with his life, and he finds that maybe he hasn't done very much. This is the kind of spiritual and deeply philosophical picture that a Satyajit Ray or an Ozu or a Bergman would have made, and Sayles really is
a treasure.
A treasure for working on this material.
You bet.
When we come back, the video pick of the week, which was also my pick as the best film of last year. This week is a film the Oscar voters might have liked a lot, but I have a feeling that not many of them took the trouble to even see it. It's Eve's Bayou, an astonishingly assured and artistic debut by writer-director Casey Lemons. He tells the story through the eyes of a young girl played here by Journey Smollett, who knows her daddy, a doctor, is not spending every night at the bedsides of his patients.
He's never home. He's supposed to be home sometimes.
That's Lynn Whitfield as her mother there. Her father is played by Samuel L. Jackson as a womanizer who everybody seems to like in spite of his failings.
You're in trouble. Go down to King's and come back later. Go quick. They're really mad.
Who mad, baby?
You think a damn doctor would know that.
Who, them? They always mad.
Eve's Bayou is not a melodrama or a thriller or any kind of genre picture. It doesn't belong to any standard tradition, but it's a truly original film that reminded me, in its knowledge of this family, of some of Ingmar Bergman's autobiographical work. It was a film of seductive beauty and mystery, the best of the year, I thought, and it's newly out on video. You can find it in video stores this week. Now let's take another look at the movies we reviewed on this show. 2 thumbs down for the disappointing U.S. Marshals. Tommy Lee Jones still has the moves as the lead character, but what an ungainly plot he's in. A split decision for Hush, a thriller that I thought was about slow learners in an unbelievable situation. Gene thought it was redeemed by good work by Jessica Lange. A split decision for The Big Lebowski. I liked its skewed and whimsical humor. Gene thought it just wasn't very funny. 2 thumbs down for Twilight, where good performances by Paul Newman and others are at the service of a recycled plot. And finally, 2 very enthusiastic thumbs up for John Sayles' new film, Men with Guns, which takes a fresh approach to social injustice in Central America.
And that's the one to see this week. Coming up during our next 2 weeks, our annual 1-hour pre-Oscar special, If We Pick the Winners, where Roger and I reveal who we would choose if we were voting members of the Motion Picture Academy. You can find it on the same channel, and we'll be listing all of the channels and times for our special on our website at Siskel-Ebert.com. Next week, we'll be back with reviews of more new movies, including The Man in the Iron Mask, starring Leonardo DiCaprio.